What would you do if someone in your neighborhood acted like they owned everything, the sidewalks, the park, even the air you breathed? That's what I faced when I tried to do something as innocent as setting up a small dog meetup. I wasn't looking for trouble. I just wanted to give my new puppy a chance to play, to socialize, to be, well, a dog. But I had no idea that my harmless idea would unleash the fury of one woman who seemed determined to control everything around her. It all started on a quiet afternoon in my suburban neighborhood. The sun was warm, the breeze was gentle, and I was standing in my front yard watching my little furball sniff around, his tail wagging excitedly at every new smell. He had just finished his vaccinations, and I knew how important it was to socialize him with other dogs. Across the street was the perfect place, a huge, mostly empty field. It stretched out over acres, barely used except for the occasional soccer game or someone jogging along the edges. It wasn't fenced, but it was open to the public, and I had seen plenty of people walking their dogs there before. So, I had a simple idea. Why not use the neighborhood forum to invite other dog owners for a casual meetup? Nothing fancy, just a way for dogs to play and for people to connect. I made a quick post, kept it light and friendly, and sent it out. Within minutes, I started getting responses. Some people were excited, others had questions, but one message stood out almost immediately, one that wasn't friendly at all. Karen. She introduced herself as the head of the PDA at the local school, which happened to be across from the field, and wasted no time making her stance clear. We can't have dogs running around on school property, she wrote, even though it wasn't school property at all. People let their dogs poop everywhere, and we're not going to be responsible for cleaning up after them. Her tone wasn't just concerned, it was commanding, as if she had the final say. As if the field belonged to her. Her message threw me off. I had never heard of anyone complaining about dogs in that field before. And it wasn't like I was asking for permission to host a full-scale event, I was just suggesting a friendly gathering. But something about her message made it clear she wasn't open to discussion. She wanted to shut it down before it even started. Now, I've never been great at confrontation. I've always been the type to avoid drama, to keep the peace, to let things go. But this felt unreasonable. Still, I didn't want to escalate things, so I turned to my mom for advice. My mom, unlike me, had never been afraid to speak her mind. After reading Karen's message, she shook her head and helped me craft a response, polite, firm, but clear. I reassured Karen that everyone would clean up after their dogs and that we would be respectful of the space. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought a reasonable response would settle things. But Karen wasn't the type to let things go. And I was about to find out just how far she was willing to go to get her way. The next morning, I stepped outside with my dog, feeling a little relieved that I had at least responded to Karen with confidence. The air was crisp, the sky a soft shade of blue, and for a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, she would drop the issue. After all, I hadn't done anything wrong. The field was open for public use, and my post was just an invitation, nothing more. But my hope for a quiet resolution didn't last long. That afternoon, as I was scrolling through emails, a knock at the door made my stomach drop. Through the window, I spotted a man in a uniform. He wasn't a police officer, but there was a badge on his chest, Animal Control. Confused, I opened the door. "Are you Megan?" the officer asked, holding a clipboard. I nodded, and he sighed before glancing down at his notes. "We received a report that your dog has been running loose in the neighborhood, potentially aggressive, and that it may not be properly vaccinated. We need to verify the situation." For a second, I couldn't even process what I was hearing. My dog? Aggressive? I looked down at the little ball of fluff sitting happily by my feet, wagging his tail at the visitor. He was small, friendly, and had never been off-leash outside of my own yard. I had his vaccination records, his tags, everything in order. That's "That's not true," I finally managed to say, still caught between confusion and anger. The officer seemed skeptical but professional. "If you have proof of vaccination and proper licensing, this should be a quick check," he said. I scrambled inside, grabbing the necessary documents, my hands shaking with frustration. As soon as I handed them over, he scanned through them, then let out a short breath. "Yeah, this all looks fine," he said. I had a feeling. We've been getting a few of these kinds of calls lately, and usually, it's not what it seems. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just bad luck. This was Karen. She must have reported me, hoping to cause problems. I clenched my jaw, trying to stay calm. "So, just to be clear, someone filed a false complaint about my dog?" I asked, my voice tight. The officer hesitated before answering. "I can't disclose who reported it, but, let's just say we get certain names popping up more than others," he said, giving me a knowing look. I thanked him for his time, but as I closed the door, my heart was pounding. Karen had taken this beyond an argument, she had tried to use authorities to intimidate me. And if she was willing to go that far, I had a feeling she wasn't done yet. Later that evening, I decided I couldn't just sit back and let this continue. I called Diane, the former HOA leader, someone who had always seemed fair-minded and reasonable. If anyone knew how to handle situations like this, it was her. As soon as I explained what had happened, there was a pause, then a low, knowing chuckle on the other end of the line. "Karen's at it again, huh?" Diane said. "I'm not surprised." Apparently, Karen had a reputation. She had been involved in multiple disputes over the years, everything from trying to enforce imaginary HOA rules to attempting to dictate what color people could paint their houses. Diane had dealt with her before and knew exactly how she operated. "She's got no real authority, Megan," she assured me. "She just makes people think she does. But I'll tell you what, if she's pulling this kind of stunt, you need to get ahead of her. Get something official on your side." That's when she gave me an idea that changed everything. "The field technically belongs to the school," Diane reminded me. "If you want to shut Karen down for good, go straight to the principal. If they give you permission, there's nothing Karen can do about it." It was brilliant. Instead of playing defense, I'd go on the offensive. The next morning, I picked up the phone and called the school's main office. After a few minutes, I was transferred to Principal Thompson, a woman who sounded both professional and approachable. I took a deep breath and explained everything, how I had simply wanted to hold a small dog meetup, how Karen had objected, how she had escalated it to the HOA, and now even to animal control. To my surprise, the principal listened patiently, then let out a sigh. "This isn't the first time I've heard complaints about Karen overstepping," she admitted. "But I'll be clear with you, there is no official rule against walking dogs on that field. As long as people clean up after their pets, I have no issue with it." I felt a wave of relief crash over me. She didn't just approve it, she was on my side. "Would it be possible for you to send something in writing?" I asked hesitantly. "Just so I have something to show if she tries anything else?" She agreed without hesitation. Within an hour, I had an email from her office, officially stating that the school had no objection to responsible dog owners using the field. I stared at the screen, barely believing it. Karen had gone through all this trouble, convinced she could bully me into submission, but in the end, I had done something she never expected. I fought back the right way. For the first time since this whole ordeal started, I felt like I had won. But as much as I wanted to believe Karen would give up now, something in my gut told me this wasn't over. If there was one thing I had learned about people like her, it was that they didn't like losing. And Karen? She was about to get even worse. I had the email from the principal. I had official permission. By all logic, this should have been the end of it. Karen had no more ground to stand on, no more excuses to harass me. But if there was one thing I was quickly learning, it was that Karen didn't need logic, she thrived on control. And she wasn't done trying to assert hers. The first sign came later that evening when I checked the neighborhood forum. My post about the dog meetup was still up, and several neighbors had commented, showing support. Some were excited to bring their own dogs, while others, even if they weren't dog owners, saw it as a great way to strengthen the community. But buried among the positive comments was one that made my stomach twist. "Megan is stirring up unnecessary conflict in our community," the post read. "We should all be working together to respect our shared spaces, not using them in ways that disrupt the neighborhood. This kind of divisive behavior does nothing but create problems." The name attached? Karen, of course. It wasn't a direct attack, but it was enough to send a signal. She wanted to paint me as the troublemaker, the unreasonable one. And before I could even respond, I noticed something even worse. My account had been suspended. I blinked at the screen, refreshing the page, but the message remained. "Your account has been temporarily disabled due to multiple reports from community members." I sat there in disbelief. Karen had reported me, and not just that, she had clearly convinced enough people, or at least worked the system enough, to get me silenced. It was a low move, even for her. But unlike before, I wasn't just going to sit there and take it. I immediately reached out to the forum moderators, explaining the situation. The next 24 hours were agonizing. I could still see posts, still read what people were saying, but I couldn't respond. And Karen? She took full advantage of my absence. She doubled down on her narrative, subtly painting herself as the concerned community member just trying to preserve order, while I was some disruptive force causing division. But what she hadn't counted on was other people stepping up for me. By the next morning, I woke up to a flood of texts from neighbors, some I barely even knew. "What's going on with your forum account? Karen's at it again. We're backing you up." I logged back in, and what I saw nearly made me laugh out loud. The same post where Karen had accused me of causing division? It had been hijacked by the community. Dozens of comments had piled in, defending me, calling out Karen's behavior, even sharing their own stories of how she had overstepped in the past. People were fed up, and then, just as I was about to message the moderators again, I saw the update. "Account reinstated." And right below it, a comment from one of the forum admins. "After reviewing reports, we've determined that there was no violation of community guidelines. Please remember that this forum is for open discussion and should not be used to silence differing opinions." Karen had lost this round. And judging by the silence from her after that, she knew it too. But fate had a way of delivering justice in the most satisfying way possible. Because a few days later, I caught her walking her own dog on the very field she tried to ban everyone else from using. It was early in the morning, just after sunrise, when I was taking my pup for a walk. The air was cool, the grass still damp with dew. And there, on the far side of the field, was Karen, leash in hand, strolling casually as if she hadn't spent the last few weeks fighting to keep dogs off this very ground. I stopped dead in my tracks, almost unable to believe what I was seeing. But then, as I watched, she did something that sealed her fate completely. Her dog, a small, worry terrier, **** squatted *down in the grass, ****, and Karen? She didn't pick it up. I don't know what came over me, but before I could even think twice, I pulled out my phone. A single photo. Karen, standing there, looking around like she was hoping no one had noticed. But I had. I didn't even have to say anything when I posted it on the forum later that day. Just a simple caption. "I guess the field is fine for dogs after all, as long as they belong to Karen." The response was instant. Comments flooded in, people laughing, people calling her out, people pointing out the blatant hypocrisy. Some even joked about organizing a community cleanup just for Karen's mess. And Karen? She didn't say a word. Not one response. Not one attempt at damage control. She just disappeared from the conversation entirely. For the first time since this entire nightmare began, it felt like the tide had finally turned. And it was about to turn even more. Because while Karen was licking her wounds, I had an idea that would bring the entire neighborhood together, and it would be the final nail in her self-appointed reign of control. Karen had gone quiet. No more snarky forum posts, no more fake HOA notices, no more desperate attempts to control the neighborhood. It should have felt like a victory, and in some ways, it did. But I knew better than to think she was truly done. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat, she was just waiting, plotting her next move. And so, before she could strike again, I made my own. The idea came naturally, sparked by conversations with neighbors who had rallied around me in the forum. If Karen had spent all this time trying to dictate how the community used the field, why not prove that it belonged to everyone? Not just dog owners, not just parents or joggers or weekend soccer teams, but everyone. A space where people could come together without someone breathing down their necks, acting like an unofficial sheriff. So, I made a new post. This time, it wasn't just about the dog meetup, it was bigger than that. A community picnic, open to anyone who wanted to enjoy a day outside. Bring your dogs, bring your kids, bring a blanket and some food. No rules, no restrictions, just neighbors being neighbors. The response was immediate. The thread filled up with excited messages. Families offering to bring extra food, someone suggesting lawn games, another offering to set up a few tables. Even people I had never spoken to before were chiming in, eager to be part of something that, for the first time in a long time, felt like a true community event. It was perfect. And that's exactly why Karen couldn't stand it. The picnic was set for Saturday afternoon, and everything came together better than I had imagined. The field, which had once felt empty and underused, now buzzed with life. Kids ran around with soccer balls, dogs chased each other through the grass, people sat in clusters on picnic blankets, laughing and sharing food. There was no tension, no conflict, just a neighborhood finally acting like one. And then the police showed up. At first, I didn't even notice. I was in the middle of a conversation with Becca, who had brought her golden retriever, when I caught the flash of red and blue lights in my peripheral vision. A murmur spread through the crowd as two officers stepped out of their patrol car, scanning the scene. My stomach dropped. I had a sick feeling I already knew who was behind this. One of the officers, a tall man with a neutral expression, approached the group closest to them. I made my way over, my heart hammering in my chest, just in time to hear him say, "We got a call about an unauthorized gathering and noise complaints. Can someone tell me what's going on here?" A few people glanced at each other before looking at me. I took a breath and stepped forward. "We're just having a neighborhood picnic," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's a community event, families, dog owners, just people enjoying the space." The officer nodded, glancing around. He saw what I saw, nothing but people minding their own business, no loud music, no fights, no chaos. Just an ordinary weekend gathering. He turned to his partner, exchanging a look before facing me again. "Mind if I ask who organized this?" I hesitated for half a second before nodding. "That would be me." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I'll be honest with you, we figured this wasn't anything serious. But we have to check it out whenever we get a complaint." I knew exactly where this was going. "Let me guess. Karen?" The officer didn't answer, but his slight smirk told me everything I needed to know. A wave of exasperated laughter rippled through the crowd. People knew. They knew exactly what had happened, and it was so unbelievably petty that even the cops seemed tired of it. Someone muttered, "Of course she did," while another neighbor shook their head. "Do you want us to shut it down?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Because I'm not sure what the legal grounds are for having a potluck in a public field. The officer chuckled, shaking his head. No, ma'am. You're not breaking any laws. You're free to continue. A cheer erupted from the group, and I couldn't help but grin as the officers turned to leave. But before they did, one of them looked back at me. By the way, this isn't the first call we've gotten from your neighborhood. And it's usually about things that, he paused, choosing his words carefully, aren't exactly emergencies. Translation: Karen had wasted their time before. The moment they drove off, the picnic resumed as if nothing had happened. But the energy in the air had shifted. Karen's stunt had backfired spectacularly. Instead of making me look bad, she had made herself the villain of the entire neighborhood. And she had just handed me the final push I needed. I turned to Becca and grinned. I think it's time we start making this picnic a regular thing. Because Karen wanted control. She wanted to dictate how people lived, how they used their space, how they interacted with each other. But today? She had lost. And we had won. Karen never showed up that day. Not to apologize, not to argue, not to try and reclaim whatever authority she thought she had. After the cops left and the picnic carried on, it was as if she had finally realized that her grip on the neighborhood was slipping. And for the first time, no one cared what she thought. Over the next few weeks, something incredible started happening. The picnic had been a catalyst. People who had never spoken before were suddenly stopping to chat on their evening walks. Parents were making plans for future playdates. Dog owners who had once just nodded in passing were now walking together in small groups, letting their pets run alongside each other. The neighborhood, once filled with quiet tension, was actually becoming a community again. And Karen? She faded into the background. No more complaints, no more fake HOA notices, no more weaponizing the system to get her way. Whether it was embarrassment or sheer exhaustion, she had finally stopped trying to control what wasn't hers to control. Even the neighborhood forum, once a place where she had dictated conversations, had turned against her. People no longer engaged with her comments, and her influence, once so strong, had completely evaporated. The best part? The picnic became a tradition. What started as a single event turned into a monthly gathering, growing each time. Someone suggested potlucks, another floated the idea of movie nights on the field. Even neighbors who had lived in the area for years but had kept to themselves started showing up. And for the first time since I moved in, I felt like I belonged here. Looking back, it wasn't just about a dog meetup. It wasn't just about the field. It was about standing up to the kind of person who believes they can dictate what everyone else does simply because they like to be in control. It was about refusing to let a bully shape the way an entire community functions. And in doing so, it wasn't just me who won, it was all of us. Karen had spent so much time trying to police the neighborhood, but in the end, she was the one who had to fall in line. So, what about you? Have you ever had to stand up to a Karen in your neighborhood? Or worse, an HOA that thought they could control everything? Drop your story below. I have a feeling I'm not the only one.